Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 1st of February 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, education and information asymmetry and all that sort of stuff for the kind of like first 5 minutes of this episode. So, basically, I came across this tweet today that's from this Thomas guy that said, was complaining about the gas fees. It said, yes, but the gas complaint is still valid. Right now, 99% of dApps are not on rollups. Optimistic and Arbitrum still have high fees. $20 is still nowhere near acceptable. You need a different L2 wallet for each rollup. I'm bullish on the future, but not for another year at least. Now, obviously, a lot of what's in this tweet is just wrong information. And I quote tweeted this and said, I was impressed by how much wrong information was in this tweet because most of the popular apps are already live on Arbitrum, Optimism, and Polygon. And we'll be live on the other L2s as they become more generalized as well. Optimism and Arbitrum fees are not $20. A swap is less than $5 on these networks and getting cheaper over time. And you don't need a different L2 wallet for each rollup, right? We can all just use MetaMask. You can just literally use one wallet and add all the networks you want, and it's all well and good. So what I guess the point of me bringing this up today is that no matter how much we educate, and how many kind of like educational videos I do, newsletters I do, how much we all kind of like educate our friends, family, whoever else, there's always going to be this poor information out there. I actually don't know where Thomas has gotten this information from, because all it takes to basically debunk this sort of stuff is you can go to the L2s, you can see the apps on there, you can see there's Uniswap on all of them, you can see that there's Aave on the test nets, and that's really one of the only major ones missing. You can see Curves on there, a bunch of other projects on there as well, right? And then you can see at l2fees.info that the fees for a swap are not anywhere near $20. You should also know that if you've used an L2, you don't need a separate wallet for each L2, right? You can just use MetaMask. So I don't know where this information came from. I mean, I can take a guess, probably from some of the, less reputable YouTubers out there who like to spread this kind of stuff, especially the stuff around the merge reducing gas fees, which you guys know is a pretty massive pet peeve of mine, and I'm not looking forward to that kind of like happening around there. But yeah, I mean, the whole point of me bringing this up, really, just to bring it back here, is that I don't think you can ever educate too much. I think education is always going to be kind of like an ongoing thing. You can't repeat yourself too much. I think, there's plenty of times where I'll repeat myself on the refuel. I repeat myself a lot on here, but I think it's worth doing so because there's probably not always the same viewers. Maybe you forgot something that you may need a refresher on. And I don't think it's a waste of time repeating stuff. So yeah, just wanted to kind of like start off today's episode with that. But on that note, there's plenty of other things to get through. So let's get educating. So Danny Ryan's blog post finally came out. This is the one that I've been talking about for the last few days. It's basically the Finalized series that he does. This is number 33 about the Ethereum consensus layer, formerly known as ETH2. It's a very short update, of course, but there's updates around the merge and client diversity here. So there's another kind of like testnet coming called Kiln. I think that's how you say it, Kiln. So this will kind of like be spun up soon. There's a spec here. Engineers are busy knocking out the changes, as Danny says here. So that's really good to see. And then obviously client diversity is a big topic right now, and I've gone through that a lot on the refuel with you guys before, so I'm not going to rehash it there. So great to see the merge progress. From what I can see, the merge spec is almost frozen. As I mentioned to you guys, frozen means that there's no more changes being made to the spec, so the developers can just build without having to worry about any major changes being made. But on top of that as well, the engineering work seems to be coming along really nicely. They're finding the bugs. They're doing these test nets. So things are looking really well. I haven't heard anything about not being able to meet that June deadline, but a lot can happen between now and June. So we'll have to see what shakes out there. But if you want to give this whole post to read, could be linked in the YouTube description, and there's obviously links in here to learn more about each of these things. I'm looking forward to seeing Kiln rebooted. I'm looking forward to seeing client diversity improve. I have it on good authority that we're making some progress here in the background with major providers out there. I'm talking to a few people about this. We're really trying to push these major providers, such as exchanges and staking service providers, to get off the majority client being Prism right now and get onto the more minority client. So we're going to see some positive stuff around this, I think, over the next few months. So I'm very much looking forward to that as well. So Polynya is back with a fresh blog post called Danksharding, which is basically a TLDR of what that new sharding kind of design that came from Danksharding is all about. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, obviously. You can go give this a read for yourself. But if Polynya is excited about something, I'm excited about something. And as I've said to you guys, I think Danksharding, or this new sharding design from Dankrad, and that's where the name came from, obviously, is a massive leap forward in blockchain scalability, in the modular stack, and everything that we're super excited about. Now, obviously, sharding has been around as long as proof of stake has been around. It's been a long time coming. We've settled on data sharding, which is basically what Danksharding still is. But there are a bunch of reasons to be excited about that. I think for me, what kind of like caught my eye, and these are kind of Polynya's points here, was that you can have synchronous calls between ZK rollups and Ethereum L1 as they confirm in the same block. You can see how this can be interesting for stuff like DAMM. So basically being able to kind of like go cross-chain with synchronous calls, meaning that you can kind of like have, how do I explain this in kind of like layman's terms? I mean, if you know what synchronous and asynchronous means, then then you'll get it. But I guess like I can explain the difference between the two. Asynchronous is when like you send a message and then you get like a reply back, like maybe a few seconds later or something. Whereas synchronous is kind of like it happens at the same time, right? It's in sync. So I mean, that's like a really simplified explanation of it. But that's exactly what happens in an Ethereum block, right? When you do things like when you do things like atomic transactions on Ethereum, where you can string all these protocols together and do it all in an Ethereum block, or do kind of like flash loans, arbitrage, and stuff like that. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And also it opens up the possibility for upgrading the current Ethereum execution layer, which is the layer that we all use right now, the layer 1, to an enshrined rollup. First as an optimistic rollup with statelessness and fraud proofs, eventually as an enshrined ZK rollup with ZK EVM, which the astute observer will see that if the current Ethereum execution environment that we know as layer 1 Ethereum became an enshrined ZK rollup, it could benefit from the fact that it can have synchronous calls between ZKRs and Ethereum L1, because Ethereum L1 would be a ZKR, right? So that's really, really cool. So anyway, I highly recommend giving this post a read, and Polynya links to a bunch of other kind of like reading materials for you guys to get your head around as well. I think this is the next big thing that's going to be talked about, at least for the next, until it gets implemented, probably for the next, couple of years or something like that. And I think it's going to change the game again. Like Ethereum just keeps doing this, right? We keep changing the game. We keep coming up with all these really cool new things. And I mean, I haven't been as excited about something since the modular stack started coming to prominence, and since we started getting these L2s online. It really is like a leap forward here. And if it works as advertised, it can be very, very good for a number of reasons. So definitely give this blog post a read, but that's it on that one. On to the next one. So Chris Burniske shared a really great chart on Twitter today, where he captioned it with % share of fees over time, ETH green, BTC red. And you can see here that ETH has eaten into the fee revenue and basically dwarfs Bitcoin now, which should be obvious to anyone that's been paying attention. Now, there were some people who said that this was kind of like a negative thing. Obviously, high fees on layer 1 are bad for end users, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to rehash again why I think high fees are fine for layer 1 Ethereum, because that's kind of like what we're optimizing for, right? Layer 1 being a settlement layer. But I also saw people kind of like hitting back and saying that, well, the Bitcoin network actually settles more dollar value for the amount of fees that are being paid than the Ethereum network does. But the thing is that this is actually an apples to oranges comparison. You can't compare the two networks. Ethereum is a smart contract blockchain. Bitcoin is not. All that the Bitcoin network can do is send and receive BTC and a few other limited, like very, very limited things. But it has no concept of a gas model, right? It has no concept of a gas limit, or of kind of like different things costing different instructions like on Ethereum. For example, on Ethereum, sending ETH is cheaper than interacting with a smart contract or sending a token, because that's interacting with a smart contract. On BTC, you're really just sending Bitcoin around. So that's dictated by their own mempool and their own fee market. But the thing is that it doesn't matter that the dollar value of the kind of like value being sent across as compared to the fees on Ethereum is lower than Bitcoin, because that's not the right comparison. Like imagine when Ethereum layer 1 just becomes a settlement layer for rollups, right? And then that's kind of like the majority of the activity. Well, the rollup call data and proofs don't actually have any economic value attached to them. Once you unpack them, you see all the transactions, you see all the economic value, but the proofs themselves and the call data itself doesn't actually have that. So technically, if all Ethereum block space was taken up by L2 proofs and transactions, then Ethereum's kind of like value transferred on layer 1 would probably be near zero. So that's why I think it's just kind of like a moot comparison. But I mean, in saying that, it's also maybe a bit disingenuous to compare the percent share of fees as well, just because kind of like Bitcoin can't do what Ethereum can do. But at the same time, Bitcoin wants to be a settlement layer. You can't be a settlement layer if you can't even verify Starks or Snarks, which is actually pretty simple to do. For Bitcoin, if they just kind of like adopted a few new opcodes, and I say simple, I mean obviously nothing simple when it comes to changing Bitcoin. But in saying that, I mean, Ethereum is just miles ahead because you can do so much more on it, right? And like you can't with Bitcoin. So I think that obviously the better comparison is smart contract blockchain to smart contract blockchain, but Bitcoin can't call itself a settlement layer anymore. It's not settling anything except BTC. No one's settling anything there. Layer 2s aren't settling there, obviously, because they can't. There's just nothing really happening there. Whereas on Ethereum, obviously there are millions of things being settled on their everyday tokens, NFTs, layer 2 proofs and call data and just ETH itself, right? All that sort of activity happening, and that's why the fees are where they are, and why it's still tens of millions of dollars of fee revenue every day, which we're burning, by the way. We shouldn't ever forget that. But I still thought this was a cool chart here, just showing kind of like the absolute dominance. And if you overlaid the kind of like the price chart here, I think it would be an interesting kind of like chart to look at as well, because you can see it started collapsing once Ethereum started gaining prominence in 2017. Then it went back up as the Ethereum network didn't really have much going for it in 2018, 2019. Then in 2020, DeFi summer around May, June, just kind of from Chris here. But as I said, there's a bit of nuance here. You shouldn't just take it on face value. There's a lot more that can be discussed here, but got a bunch of other stuff to get through. So I put out this tweet today where I said bullish on the intersection of DeFi and NFTs. Now, I mentioned yesterday, I think it was, or maybe on one of the refuels from last week, that DeFi is never going to be fun, right? Like true DeFi. What's fun about quote unquote DeFi is the money games or the Ponzi's or the things that you can speculate on really, really heavily, make a lot of money, lose a lot of money. It's basically like gambling. That's where the entertainment aspect comes from. Whereas with NFTs, it's very different, because with NFTs, yes, you can speculate, but as soon as you buy like a profile picture NFT, you become part of a community. And especially because you can actually obviously link it to your Twitter account now and have like the hexagon profile picture portrait there, you can just instantly become part of this community. You can join the Discord channel, you can get to know people, you can kind of like, and if the project's being more than just a profile picture NFT project, they actually want to build something, you can get involved with that. So there's a lot happening across that sort of stuff. Obviously there's stuff happening with DeFi, but to most people it's boring. There's no pretty pictures to look at, there's no cool things to kind of like ape into, there's no kind of like games to be played, but there can be. We can have an intersection between DeFi and NFTs. There's so much overlap that can be had here, and there's actually a few projects doing this right now, starting simple but kind of like can get more complex over time. For example, Slingshot the other day did an NFT drop. People can get involved in that and they can trade it on Slingshot. I thought that was really cool, right? Gets more people using Slingshot, gets people excited about the NFTs, which were pretty cool. And now there's Element Finance doing the Alphiverse, they're calling it here, where it seems to be kind of like an intersection between NFTs and DeFi. So I'm really liking this trend. I'm hoping to see more of it as time goes on. I think we will. And this is kind of like how we get people excited about DeFi again. Let's blend the things. Let's blend the entertainment into the quote unquote like boring stuff with finance and get people more excited about it. And I'm sure there's plenty of ideas out there that teams are having right now they're going to come up with. And it's going to be really cool to see how that all shakes out. I personally am not very creative. And there are other kind of like projects as well, like you can see in the replies to my tweet here. There's Cryptonauts by Block Zero Labs, which blends NFTs and DeFi through collateralization, generate yield for holding, basically bringing all the DeFi concepts to NFTs and stuff like that. And there's a bunch of other kind of like projects here as well, if you want to check that out in my tweet here. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty excited for that. I'm very excited to see what teams come up with here as well. So Influence, I think I've mentioned this project to you guys before on the refuel, but they call themselves a grand strategy space MMO backed by NFTs, set in a distant asteroid belt and built on Ethereum. Specifically, they're building on Starknet. So they put out a teaser screenshot today just saying exciting things are happening with what looks like a kind of, I guess, like a picture of space with a bunch of God, I don't even know the terminology. I'm so bad at this. But I mean, I don't want to focus on the screenshot too much. What I want to focus on is kind of like the concept of, I guess, like crypto gaming in general, and how on these L2s we're going to be able to unlock a lot of these games that obviously weren't possible on L1. And there are actually some really cool things that are being done on Starknet right now on the physics side of things. So some person, I can't remember their name right now, was doing a bunch of stuff around physics and kind of manipulating objects and stuff like that. That's only possible using Starks. Obviously, you have the Dark Forest game using Snarks and to basically have like a game that runs and there's rounds of it and everything is really cool as well. But I'm like, as a former gamer, I mean, I play games from time to time, but I used to play a lot more games than I do these days. I'm super looking forward to this sort of stuff. I want to get my kind of like hands on a game where it's kind of like got NFTs integrated in it. It's actually a good game. It's not just a game that you have to grind out and it feels like you're just working another job, which a lot of these kind of like games are these days. I want a good game with NFT crypto elements included in it. I don't want a bad game with NFT and other elements attached to it just for the sake of kind of like adding NFTs and stuff to it, right? And there's a lot of that going on right now. And it's actually extremely hard to make a good game. Like, I think people underestimate just how difficult it is to make a good game because of the fact that not only do you have to make something that obviously people enjoy, but if you're adding NFTs and financialization to it, you have to be very careful because it can very quickly become pay to win. And what that is, for those who don't know, it's this trend in gaming that has kind of like come to prominence, especially in the mobile gaming era, where essentially you can just speed through your progress by paying money to do so, like paying real money to do so. And as I said, this is especially prominent with mobile gaming, where there's tons of these kind of like games where you build up your empire or something like that, and there's different themes and stuff. But they kind of like gate you behind the content, so you'll progress really quickly at the start, and they'll get you addicted to it, and then they'll charge you a lot of money to keep progressing, and you'll never catch it. It gets more expensive the more progress you make, and unless you kind of like wait. So it's either you wait a long time or you pay to kind of like fast forward, and you pay to essentially time travel and kind of like get things today. I don't want to see that trend in crypto gaming because that just is not a fun game. That is literally just kind of like paying money to kind of like cheat. I mean, essentially to me, it's like cheating, right? Just paying money to cheat your way or to kind of like bring stuff forward. But also those games on mobile, they're not exactly good games. They're just addictive games. They're just kind of like, really at the end of the day, it's borderline casino games and gambling. And we have plenty of those already in crypto. So I'm just looking forward to seeing good games come to life here. And Influence is one that I'm definitely paying attention to, as I'm a massive space nerd. So I'm curious to see how they shake out here. I think it's going to be cool. So Ben from Optimism put together a tweet thread today on that thing that I talked about last week, the Cannon, which they're building as the world's first EVM equivalent fault-proof implementation. But it's also, as Ben says here, a way to run any Golang in a rollup, a mind-blowing new FP fraud-proof design enabling optimal data costs, and a new stateless Ethereum implementation. So a lot of the smart Ethereum people that I know are getting super excited about this. Look, I'm not going to lie to you guys and say that I know exactly what it means because I'm not like on the protocol side of things. I don't work at the protocol level. I don't kind of like work at the lower levels. But this thread from Ben gives a pretty great overview of it and has links to kind of like learning more information about it as well. I highly recommend giving it a read. That's kind of like what I wanted to highlight here. But yeah, I think, the funny thing is I think these kind of like L2 teams, some of them, especially like Optimism and Arbitrum, they're very quiet on the kind of, I guess, like marketing front, but they're building some really cool stuff. And it's not just stuff that's going to benefit the L2, it's also going to benefit the L1 as well. And like stuff that we're doing with Ethereum core protocol as in addition to kind of like the L2 core protocol stuff. And the funny thing is that this stuff is open source. It's being given away for basically free. There's no licensing costs here, at least for Optimism's case, there isn't. There's no kind of like pay to play sort of thing as I was just talking about before. It's like, we're building cool shit. Here's the cool shit that you can use. Make Ethereum better using the cool shit that we built. I love that sort of stuff. That's what we're here for. That's what Ethereum is. So I'm super excited about more of this stuff coming out, but definitely go give this thread a read. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. So GalleonDAO has announced their seed round today, which disclaimer here, I participated in. So they've raised $1 million from a bunch of different investors. You can see here 1KX is involved with myself, Sandeep from Polygon, a bunch of other people, Ivan here from Gearbox Protocol, Nick Chong here, who is investing with ParaFi. And yeah, I mean, so what is GalleonDAO? Well, it's an asset management methodologist guild and set swap, as you can see here. Now, what does that mean? Well, you guys have known that I've been talking about index co-op for a while now, and I was involved in that through set. Basically, with index co-op, there was a bunch of index products created, and they had the kind of like asset managers behind them and stuff like that. So what GalleonDAO wants to be is basically a DAO or a guild for an asset management methodologists to create the kind of like best asset management strategies, not just index products, but like other structured products as well. There's a lot of these kind of things you can create these days using the, I guess like the tools that are available today. And if you kind of like, do that, you can unlock, you can unlock really great products for end users, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of complexity here that I discussed yesterday, how we have to make these things simple. And, you know, when you go on Etherscan and look at the actual names of the tokens, like when you deposit a token into like Yearn, for example, you may get like another token back that has just like a really weird name, and it has like an acronym for like so many different things. And you may look at that and be like, what the hell is going on? This is just weird. Like, well, you know, this is super weird. I got no idea what this means. Like, someone explain it to me. You have to kind of like unpack the whole thing. Now, what if there was just a way to have that kind of like just as like one token with one name on it, and then in the background, everything's kind of like abstracted away from the end user, and you just kind of like very easily buy into this sort of stuff. And that's kind of like one of the goals of GalleonDAO here. So, you know, you can read the thread here for a bit more background on that. They're also looking for people to join the team as well. So definitely go check this out. And also, I forgot to mention, they're launching on Arbitrum natively as well. So obviously, as you guys know, I'm super bullish on native L2 projects. So very very bullish on them launching there. But yeah, very excited for this. Proud to be a backer of them here. They're going to be using Set Protocol's infrastructure as well. Very excited about that. As you guys know, I worked at Set and still an advisor to them. So very excited about that. But definitely go check out the thread, the blog post, and also the kind of like opportunities here to see if you want to work with GalleonDAO. All right, so final thing here. So the Hop Intern Twitter account here spotted this on ZapperFi today. So Zapper seems to have a native bridge, integration with Hop now. So you can transfer, in this example, from Arbitrum to Polygon. You select what asset you want to transfer, select all the other fees down here, such as slippage tolerance and allowance and stuff. And then you can see the bridge route label down the bottom. So it takes about 5 minutes to go from Arbitrum to Polygon using the HopBridge right now. So that's really cool. I mean, that's so quick, right, guys? Like Arbitrum, I mean, remember when everyone was fighting the optimistic rollup, saying it would take 7 days to withdraw, it's dead on arrival, no one's going to use it. Well, now you can go from Arbitrum, a layer 2 optimistic rollup on Ethereum, to Polygon, which is the Polygon POS chain, which obviously not a layer 2, but you can do so within 5 minutes. So obviously a very good bridging experience there, super exciting. Great to see Zapper supporting this here. And I mean, you guys know my opinions on bridges as well. Like, be safe when using these kind of bridges. Hop is relatively fine because it's a very reputable project. And everything like that. But I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm sure there's kind of like centralized control still in place for them too. I'm sure there's kind of like risks involved with that sort of stuff. And there's actually been a bit of discussion lately about getting L2 Beat to also include information about bridges. And I think that would be good because there's so many of these bridges and no one's really had like a one-stop shop for documenting everything going on these bridges. So I really think that that's necessary. And I really hope that L2 Beat takes it up and kind of like has the bridges listed as well. Because as I said plenty of times, the bridges are just important as these kind of like layer 2 networks from both a, you know, I guess usability standpoint, from both kind of like a addressable market standpoint, but most importantly from a security standpoint, because there's so many of them are just like multi-sigs or have centralized controls in place, and users need to know this. As long as they know it, as long as they have the information easily accessible to them, it's much better than them just kind of like blindly bridging across. And then if the bridge gets compromised or something happens, they then thinking to themselves, wow, I just lost all my money, right? So yeah, I'm hoping to see that on L2 Beat there. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.